Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you. This is Meat Monogamy. Welcome back. I am Olivia Lara Owen, also known widely as Liv, and this is a long form podcast. This is my first solo podcast. We are in the early stages here, and Meat Monogamy is all about nourishment, devotion, self-trust, and really building a life that can really sustain and hold you. And this is the first podcast episode that I'm recording since the podcast went live. So it's been very exciting. It's been really well received. I'm so excited that we're out there on all the platforms. And I'm especially excited that we're on YouTube. And, I really think that in terms of podcasting, it's great to be on video as well, because I know you like to have this up, when you're cleaning the dishes in your kitchen or on your screen. And I know that it's really nice to have the video as well. So thank you for the warm reception. And if you are a new listener and you love the podcast and you love what we're doing here, please leave a review on Apple. That's like the best way to support the podcast in its early stages. So if you are a fan, if you're like, I'm fangirling this, please show your support and subscribe and leave a review and just help us get out there, help us kind of grow. That's what we are here for. Okay. So today we're going to be speaking about containment and how containment is not control. And the reason I'm speaking about this today is because there's something I'm seeing all the time. I'm seeing this all the time in intelligent, high capacity women, like the women that come to me, the women I coach. And there's this real confusion between what is containment and what is control. Okay. So I'm going to kick us off by speaking about freedom, because I think this is going to help segue us in. So I hear a lot of you, and, most capable women will say they want freedom, right? You will say, I want freedom. Okay. And it may be something that you are aware of, that freedom is a high value for you. It may be something that you are less aware of. Perhaps you don't even really recognize that freedom is really important to you, but maybe other people in your life may be able to tell you, like, freedom is definitely really important to you. Okay. Either way, there's no judgment here, but it's very common. It's a very common thing to say, you want freedom. Okay. And this is important, because this is why this topic today is important, because what I see is what you often actually mean is that you don't want to be constrained, you don't want to be limited, and you don't really like anyone else telling you what to do. Okay. I get it. I so get it. I could be speaking about a version of myself in the past, and even creeps in now, where I didn't want constraints, I didn't want limits, and I certainly didn't want anyone telling me what to do. So if this is you tend to resist structure and resist containment, resist containers, and you're going to resist anything that feels like it's going to reduce or even slightly threaten your autonomy. Okay. So if you're getting like ding, 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 that sounds like me, keep listening, okay? Because what I find that you're actually reacting to is not containment. It's not actually being contained. It's about control. You're reacting to control, and that's it's not the same thing, right? So, oops. Yes. Okay. So what do I mean? So you might be thinking that you're like reacting to all the structure, but it's actually, yeah, as I said, this is control thing happening, right? So let's unpack it, okay? Because control and containment, not the same thing, okay? Not the same thing. So why do I think high capacity women resist structure? Okay. So if you are someone who's super competent, brilliant, responsible, you're somebody that's carrying a lot in your life, structure sometimes can feel like an insult. Okay. Structure can sometimes feel like an insult. Let's unpack that, right? What do I mean? So you might think that you're like, I'm already managing everything. I don't need more rules. I don't need oversight. I don't need someone holding me. But actually what I see being true is that if you are that woman, you're often underheld, you're relied upon, you are leaned on, right? You are the person that is looked to for stability, right? You are that pillar, okay? The one holding it all together. That is the definition often of a high capacity woman, is that you're the one that's like holding everything nice and tight together, okay? And because you're the strong one, people will assume that you don't need containment, you don't need holding, you don't need structure, right? But ultimately, this strength that you can demonstrate because you're highly capable without containment ultimately becomes a life of depletion. Like over time, it's unsustainable and you will find yourself depleted. The ladies that come to me are like, I know I'm brilliant. I know I have so much to offer the world. You know, I love my life and I know that I am depleted and I don't know how to do it differently. Okay. So, what is often happening is rather than having containment and structure and like clean holding that feels good for you in your life, you have what looks more like rigid control. And I'm going to say this without any judgment because it's just sort of like, see if you recognize yourself. Okay. So, rigid control can feel like tightness. So, maybe you feel quite tight. Maybe you're monitoring, like you're constantly monitoring everything. You're like, you know, you're kind of like surveillance style managing everything in your life. Punishing, like you tend to be quite punishing towards yourself if you don't get it right or you don't get it perfect. Fear of making mistakes, you know, perfectionism, right? Um, somebody needs to be the winner, right? You're constantly like looking for the places where you can win, right? And ultimately, when you're controlling this much, it will ultimately deplete your capacity and it will reduce your capacity. And it does actually create a contraction. Okay. So see if any of those resonate for you, right? Do you recognize yourself there? Right. And I want to name why clean containment feels different. So and different kinds of holding feels different, right? Because in a clean containment versus rigid control, clean containment is like boundaries that are clear, expectations that are clear, spaces or a space where you can hold your emotions, like you have somewhere to go where you can be in your emotion without collapsing. When we're in rigid control, emotions can feel very threatening and it can feel like we're just trying to control our emotions versus like having space for them to actually flow and them to actually move through. Clean containment looks like having a framework that supports the movement in your life. Life is always happening, right? We want movement in our lives. That is a good thing. That is aliveness, vitality, right? Containment is not about restriction in any way. It's actually about providing structure so your system, your nervous system can settle more. And actually, what I have seen from a settled system, freedom actually increases. Okay, so you want freedom and you're so afraid of not getting freedom that you cling on to control in a really rigid way, but it actually creates the opposite because you're all contracted and you think you're free because you're holding on to control, but it's not really true freedom in the way that I would see it, teach it, and help you see it, right? So freedom actually increases when we have a held system, right? When we can relax, when we can soften and open and things can move through us and we can be a bit more fluid with life because we are held in some kind of structure. Okay. So I'm speaking about containment. When I mean that word, right? I literally mean like a container. So in the sense of working within a coaching container, but that word container can be translated to other things. As an example, a relationship can be a container, and that container can feel tight, punishing, surveillance, fear of getting it wrong. Somebody needs to win. So maybe you're more keen to be right than to be together. You can be in a relationship that really reduces your capacity, completely drains you, and ultimately you get smaller and smaller in that relationship, right? And then the opposite can be true. You can be in a relationship where the boundaries are clear, expectations are set. It's very clear on what your role is. There's space for you to be in your emotion. The framework of the relationship, the values, the principles supports the movement of two individuals growing. You don't feel restricted, but you feel held within the relationship, right? So that this containment can be literally a coaching container, which is the thing I offer my clients. And it can also be many other things, right? And in life, we need containment, right? Especially women like us, okay? So I'm going to speak about coaching containers for a moment because I have had this conversation with a few of you recently. And there's been this question come up around, why do some containers regulate you and others drain you? Okay. So I will say that not all containers are equal. I have been in dozens of containers with different coaches and teachers, and I have held dozens of my own over the years for various different things. I currently work one-to-one, and in my one-to-one practice, I offer a container because I believe that's the best way to work, in a contained way. I find that creates the most, I find that it creates a way to hold you through your transformation and guide you in a way that allows your system to feel the clear beginning, middle, end, and that there is something actually structured that can hold you. And then inside of that container, we can play and we can work together and we can be with whatever is emerging, right? But the containment and the structure is really, really important, that is set and that is clear. So that's what I do with one-to-one. Some people don't do one-to-one like that. That's how I do it. Containers are my jam. Before I did this my one-to-one practice, I was mostly doing my group work, had lots of group masterminds, lots of different, I had an online school that had all sorts of different tiered programs. Many of you took those programs, and I'm sure in the future, those group programs will come back in their own way in new contained forms. Okay. So I know a thing or two about containers, and I also know how I like to hold my containers, but I also know how I like to be held when I'm in containers and the kinds of things I'm looking for when I'm looking to hire someone. Okay. So some containers will regulate you and you will leave that container feeling clearer. That noise that you may have come in with will feel quieter. You'll probably feel more coherent. And there'll be other containers that will actually drain you, and they will have you feel small and managed. And you'll maybe notice that inside of that container, you're kind of slightly bracing and you're feeling slightly like you're not really relaxed. And this kind of work, this transformational work, it is by nature a little bit agitating. We want you to be a little bit agitated so you can grow, right? But we don't want you feeling drained and small and managed and like you're bracing. If you're bracing, it's very hard to learn and grow and evolve and trust if you're bracing. Bracing is a kind of frozen in place state. Okay. So I would say the difference between, containers that regulate you and allow you to feel clearer and help you feel more coherent versus the ones that drain you and have you feel controlled and managed. Some of the questions that you might be asking is, is the structure of this container serving my growth, right? Is the structure of this container serving my growth, or is it serving somebody else's anxiety, right? What about this structure, or does this structure exist to control outcomes? And if it does exist to control outcomes, that kind of container can feel very oppressive, right? When a structure exists to support capacity and capacity building, it feels steady. And you will know the difference over time because you'll feel it in your body. you will be able to be like, okay, in my body, I feel this. Okay. Okay. So types of holding environments are really important. Okay. So I would say that the kind of holding environment that helps to regulate you and bring you into more coherence, deeper coherence, is the kind of environment that can tolerate ambivalence. It can support you to not rush your process. It can support you to not collapse when you feel doubtful, because you're going to feel doubtful. Like, you're not going to feel like whoop-de-doo on top of the mountain, everything's great. Like, no, growth is a spiral. And any of you that have been to my self-trust masterclass, which I had the pleasure of delivering last week, like, you all know that growth is not a linear thing where we're just like up, up, up. We're going around and we are moving through thresholds, and then we are integrating, and then we are rebirthing. And each individual step can just feel so different to the one before it. And it can be really destabilizing if we're not held well through that. Okay. So, the kinds of holding environments that I really advocate for are ones where, they're not trying to compete with you. They're not trying to control you. They're allowing you to be where you are, right? Versus the kinds of environments that can feel like a power struggle. Okay. So this is when an environment needs you to comply. There's a certain way you have to be, right? Where the environment is like they are telling you this is the right way to be, or the environment where you feel like you're being subtly managed. Okay. So, and again, bringing this back to literal coaching containers or relationship containers, right? Like, are you with a partner that can support you in your process unfolding on its own timeline? Are you with a partner that can, allow you to have doubts sometimes and it doesn't create complete collapse in the relationship? Are you with a partner that doesn't compete with you, right? Versus being with a partner that needs you to comply, needs to be right all the time. You feel like you're being managed by them, right? There's a really big difference, okay? And what I see is many women make the mistake of feeling like there's a discomfort that comes with being held, right? So back to coaching containers, like, it's uncomfortable to be held. You're seen, there's structure around you. It can feel uncomfortable because you are going to be moving through your transformational process. Things are going to be moving for you. That is the intention. It's very different from the discomfort of being controlled and managed. And I think it's really important that you can discern between the two, right? The discomfort of growth and transforming versus the discomfort of I'm being held, I'm being controlled and managed. Okay. So what I will say though, and this is a key thing for those of you that are, really high functioning women, brilliant women, who struggle sometimes with your capacity, is being held can sometimes feel unfamiliar because you are used to self-managing all of the time. Okay. So when you come into containers and you come into being held, you can be like, this is so uncomfortable. I'm not used to this. Again, it doesn't need to be that there's anything wrong. You're just getting used to the discomfort of having structure around you. Okay. Does it make sense? Like, just taking this in and reflecting for a moment on your own experiences. I'm using these two examples of coaching and a relationship, but I'm sure there's many other examples that you can think of, right? Mm, mm. So let's go back to freedom for a moment, because I want to tie this all together. So why does real safety, like really being held well and feeling really safe, actually increase your freedom? Okay. Because I see a lot of my women, you can be freedom hunters. So you're like just constantly looking to have like no limits, but then you go out in the world and maybe you're somebody who loves to travel all the time, or you chase peak experiences and you're just going, 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 going. You may be seeking freedom, but actually your body, your nervous system feels very unsafe because you're not resourced. Like, that speed of moving through life is very hard to maintain. You don't have much support. You don't have much anchoring or holding. And it can be really, you're like, oh my God, I actually feel really unsafe, even though I'm chasing freedom because I want to feel safe, because when I'm free, I feel safe, you know? So it can be a bit of a paradox, okay? What I have seen is the more stable the container, and this is true for being held in a coaching container, your life in general, the more stable your life is, the more stable your relationship, the more expansive you can become, right? You know, they say, you know, look at the glow of a woman. And if she's like glowing and she's expressed and she's alive in the presence of a man, you know, the container of that relationship is really supporting her to expand and express herself. Versus if that woman is like getting smaller and smaller and smaller and she's not saying anything and she's just like losing all life from her face, and you know her literal body language is small, you know that relationship is 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 potentially the container of the relationship. Not pointing fingers and blaming anybody, because both people are creating this relationship together. This woman is creating this relationship with this other person, right? I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. Everyone has responsibility to take. What if there was no one to blame? But what if everybody had their part, right? And so, right, like the more stable the container, the more expansive you can become. Think about children, right? Children love to explore, and they will explore more freely with more sense of safety when they know the boundary is solid. Okay, children will really thrive in containment, not control necessarily, but containment will create the conditions in which somebody can thrive. Okay. And, you know, I've told this story before for those of you that are familiar more with my backstory, but one of my first careers was in early years education and working with young children aged 3 and 4. At that time in my life, I had fallen out of the traditional education system and was really kind of lost and finding my way. And one of the things that really helped me transform was I started a college course to train as a early years teacher. And one of the things I got to do was go and work in a placement with other professionals. So I was working in this team of women, and they were all older women in their 50s and 60s. And I was a teenager at the time. So, and I had been through a really tough few years of having no limits really, and really losing myself. And, you know, a lot had happened, and I was very sort of traumatized at that time. And I was desperate for some containment. But if you would have asked me at that time, my biggest dream in life, I would have said my biggest dream in life is to be free and to have no tethers to anybody and just be running away from all of this chaos and mess. And I was just in pain and I wanted to run. And actually, working with these women, and I would go there twice a week, what it offered me was this opportunity to anchor in to a contained environment. And inside of the contained environment, it was our job to create the containment, the safety, the boundaries, the structure for these children, and design the container that they got to play in every day in the classroom. And then step back and like let the children be children. And seeing the impact this had on our children was so deeply embedded in me, because I felt like a wounded child who didn't ever really know what that felt like. And there I was helping and being guided in how to provide that for these younger children. And I just got this cling, 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 like, oh my God, you know, we transform when we feel safe inside of loving structure. It's actually the thing we need more than anything. Right? We need limits around us. And it's not saying we can't constantly be pushing those limits, but there needs to be some limit. Right? And so that experience was really impressionable for me. And it's no surprise that I've ended up in the, you know, my whole career really has been about education, transformation, creating experiences for people to transform. And I've done that in a variety of different ways. And I'm very passionate about it. You know, I know what it's like to feel completely lost. And I've felt that pretty much every phase of my life, to feel uncontained and unanchored and unmoored and have to refine myself and recontain my life. And I've been through the cycle, the spiral so many times, right? And as adults, we're no different to children, right? When we are truly contained and well held, we will take more risks. We will take cleaner risks. We will speak more honestly because we are invited into a place of deeper safety and self-trust. We will make decisions from a steadier place. We won't be so reactive in the way we're deciding things, right? Freedom is not the absence of any structure. It is what emerges when structure becomes trustworthy. Okay. So if you find yourself resisting containers in your life, it may be worth asking whether you are reacting to past control or current containment that's being offered. Like, they're not the same, right? Past experiences of being and feeling controlled are not the same as current containments, right? And it reminds me of, like, some people can be very, very resistant to commit to a container of a relationship, right? And I was definitely one of those people. I was so afraid. And, I would just have a really hard time deciding, or I would just postpone any kind of even entertaining something like that, where I'd have to make that decision. And what I have found is the transformation that's come from committing and going all in with someone and building a life with them is safety like no other. Even though there are no guarantees of the future, like the safety of, we're going to create this container and we're going to pour into this container and this container is going to hold us. It takes great courage to do that, but we have to commit first before we have the certainty of the thing. And I think that's, I think I was speaking about this in a different episode, like, there is, in order to have safety and freedom, we do have to say yes to the uncomfortable thing that we may have been resisting. Okay. We can't really skip past it. Okay. If you recognize yourself and this is just resonating for you, right, and you're navigating something like this, maybe you're in a threshold moment, right? A lot of my women are. There's all sorts going on for them. You're building something in the world, or you're wanting to build something in the world. The old way of maybe protecting yourself is no longer working. Perhaps you're at some kind of age threshold, maybe at some kind of maturation stage or age that's starting to bring stuff up with you and you really want help crossing it. Maybe you're getting married, right? Maybe you're wanting to commit more deeply to somebody, or maybe you're looking for your life partner and you're wanting to cross that threshold. Perhaps it's the same with something like motherhood, right? Wanting to explore motherhood, or perhaps you're on that journey already, right? These are all thresholds. Maybe you're leaving a relationship. Perhaps you're somebody who you're going through an ending, right? And you want containment and guidance through that, right? This is my jam. This is what I am doing deeply with my people. And this is, if this threshold for you think this is going to really benefit from some clean containment, this is the exact thing I would recommend for my 75-minute deep dive session. So these are threshold mapping sessions where we literally identify what the threshold is that you're in. Like, we look at it, we reveal it, we name it, we give it a name. And then we look at, what is the core pattern running everything right now, right? We bring some visibility, some awareness to that. And then we look at what needs to happen next. Like, what are my expert recommendations? Like, what would I recommend? How would I guide you through this? And I will give you very clear recommendations, and you will walk away from that session either jumping straight into the one-to-one comeback container, or you're going to walk away with some kind of clarity. Okay. These sessions are worth their weight in gold. If you're interested, the link to book one is in the show notes. And if you are listening to this in real time, there's also going to be a couple more days where the self-trust masterclass is going to be available in replay form. And so get on in there. Don't wait if you want to watch that replay, because I'm going to take it down and then we'll be scheduling the next live masterclass in the coming months. Okay. A reminder, if you love this podcast and it is bringing out your fangirl and you want to show your appreciation, please leave us a review. You can do it on Apple. You can actually write on Apple. You can't do that on Spotify. You can leave comments on Spotify, so please feel free to do that on episodes if you love the episodes. But please subscribe. It's really great to have subscribes and downloads. And I really appreciate all of the support, and I really appreciate you all being here. It's so fun to have this new channel to just speak directly to you. All right, my loves, have a great day. Ciao.